Namaste, good evening, and welcome to this discussion. We are going to talk about Hussar Cut. How's it pronounced? Hussar or Hussar? Hussar. The Hussar Cut by Balázs Orbán. Um, very delighted to have you here. In a world that's becoming increasingly globalized, the idea of a Christian identity and related cultural tradition seems a little out of sync when you read that book. But that's exactly what our guest today, Mr. Balázs Orbán, is suggesting in his new book, Hussar Cut, The Hungarian Strategy for Connectivity. Let me give you a context for those who don't know. The area of Hungary is about the size of Bihar. The population of Hungary is about the size of Uttarakhand, which is approximately 5 to 5.5 Lok Sabha constituency seats. Its GDP is 212, that's somewhere between West Bengal and Karnataka. It's about 5 to 6% of India's GDP. But in terms of per capita income, an average Bulgarian is 4.5 times wealthier. It's landlocked by 7 countries, which is Slovakia, Austria to the north, Ukraine and Romania to the east, Slovenia to the west, and Croatia and Serbia to the north. So this gives you a picture of what Hungary is, what it looks like, who the people are, and where they stand today. Hussar Cut is a thought-provoking book. I would suggest for people who are looking to understand Europe through a new context, do grab a copy whenever you can. This is the first, my deep engagement with Hungary begins today, or not today, a week ago, with this book. And I'm very, very impressed that such a small nation has been able to achieve what it has and headed towards where it is. He writes in a straightforward manner. There is no if and but and on the one hand, on the other hand kind of stuff. He writes with conviction, and the conviction comes through force, and there is no ambiguity in what he's writing. It's very clear right from the first sentence. The new Hungary that he is reimagining rests on Hungarian values on the one side and Hungarian nationalism on the other. He makes several points, some of which are very conflicting. For instance, I'm going to quote him. In addition to globalization as fact, we also witness the rise of globalism as ideology. And I think a lot of us also echo with this, but I would like you to hold forth, explain this a little more. Or when he talks about the 12 rules of Hungarian connectivity, he writes, if Christianity disappears from the West too will cease to exist. We hope to hear more about this as well. Overall, Mr. Orbán explores the Hungarian national identity and heritage through the traditional Hungarian light cavalryman, a symbol of bravery, honor, and national pride. This book argues that Hungary's past is crucial to its present and future. A lawyer and a politician, Mr. Orbán is the political director to the Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. The two are not related, just to make, like we have several Guptas and Jains, so likewise they have Orbán there. The two are not related. And hence he's an important voice in the country today. Let's hear what this voice has to say. Over to you, Mr. Orbán. Maybe in 10, 15 minutes, you can give us an overview of what you are trying to argue in this book.
Sure. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here, and I would like to thank the whole ORF staff for the kind and warm welcome, especially to Samir, who is not here now, and to you as well, to hosting us and put energy into writing a book about a 10 million small nation, which is even not recognizable through the lens of Indian reality. And I'm happy to make the short, quick introduction because I want to preserve our time to questions and discussions. There are many elements of the book which are probably more interesting for European on one hand, or on the other hand, Westerners, but there are some elements which has a reflection on world order and probably to Indian strategic thinking as well. The book title was mentioned, Hussar Cut, according to the definition, and I quote, is a fast, decisive, surprising, and at the same time reckless enterprise and initiative or action that risks everything. I just have to add one thing: almost everything. So it's too much risk is always problematic, but without risk there is no success. So according to my definition and description, this is what Hungary is doing, and this is how I can explain it to my fellow Hungarian citizens and to the world. What does it mean? What does it mean having an independent, national interest-based Hungarian foreign policy? Hussars, where this was mentioned, light cavaliers from the medieval period of time. Actually, it was a Hungarian military invention which was exported for many countries. So just one example, in the American independence war, a Hungarian Hussar captain was training the American soldiers the way they can win the fight. Actually, and Hussar Cut is a special maneuver of the Hussars. It's a signature masterstroke, if I can put it that way. So my book is about 3 or 4 chapters, probably 3 important questions. I try to analyze the world order, how it's changing, and what does it mean for Hungary. And then I try to describe the Hungarian position according to our understanding. We are national conservative thinkers, so we believe that without identifying a nation's geography, history, and sociocultural background, you cannot identify the country foreign policy, because foreign policy should be based not on ideology, but on the social, cultural, geographical, and historical background of the country. Otherwise, it's going to be a dead-end street. So in the second chapter, I try to analyze in the book this Hungarian reality, which is obviously different from the American, from the Chinese, from the Indian, from the Scandinavian reality, but this is our reality. And I think it could be also interesting how in the 21st century, historical references can still play a very important role in understanding future moves of each and every government. And the third chapter is about describing the idea of a keystone state. It's a new emerging concept in international politics. Scholars do realize that the previous description of countries where you had superpowers, great powers, mid-sized powers, and small countries, it's not valid anymore, because the world changed, the world order is changed, the behavior of the countries changed. So not just this kind of categorization shouldn't be only about the size of the country and the military force of the country, because there are some countries who are playing a more important role in, for example, stabilizing its regions or having a huge visibility on the world stage, which wasn't the case in the last century. So in this chapter, I try to describe this keystone state concept and how it fits perfectly to
Mr. Orbán, if I might interrupt, I think instead of going chapter by chapter, can you jump straight to the last chapter where you talk about the 12 modes of the Hungarian way and what you think about that going forward? Maybe not all 12. There are 5 or 6 which are core, because I don't want to jump the time.
Yeah. So and the last chapter is about these 12 rules, which are very much practical rules. The first one was mentioned by you as well. Don't give up your values, build on them. I think the old neoliberal type of thinking, which was in favor of not just globalization but globalism as an ideology. The idea behind this ideology was that we have to unify our value structures as well, and through unified value structures and ideological structures, we can build a new type of world order. This idea failed. this reality is not existing anymore in this new world order, whether we call it bipolar world order or multipolar world order or a world order or a world without a world order. It doesn't matter how we call it, but in reality, those countries can only be successful who are not giving up their own values, but actually rely on them and build on them and have a foreign policy which is based on preserving, protecting, and promoting the values. And I'm, as a national conservative thinker, I deeply believe that only through this way of thinking, countries can understand each other and countries can build solid relationship. If you try to build solid relationship on political ideology, like progressive ideology, then sooner or later it will destroy, and it will destroy the stability of the world which is around us. The second rule is build coalitions. It's obviously you cannot be smart enough alone. Even the bigger ones needs coalitional partners, and these national interest first policy, it actually helps you to build coalitions with like-minded countries. It's not dividing; it's actually a unifying idea. There are some other elements of this Hungarian connectivity strategy I like to mention to you, some economic related elements. Invite as many investors as possible. So for us, it's also a sovereignty issue. We just don't want to have one type of FDI. So like FDI is coming from China or FDI is coming only from United States. We want to create a balance where we can invite investors and foreign investments from many places in many sectors, which creates a more like a balanced approach for us, which provides more sovereignty for us. So in Hungary, the four biggest foreign direct investor: the United States of America, Germany, South Korea, and China. So these are the four main players. As you can see, it's a very diverse issue. The fourth point: let your national champions be decisive. So if you rely on about your economy only the foreign direct investors, then you are lost. So you need to be in control with the strategic sectors, and you need to have a government policy which is, I would say, openly supporting your own national champions to be successful at home, but also abroad. Have sectors that serves as breakout points. So the governments should be able to identify some sectors which are breakout sectors. These are strategic sectors. These should have a special focus. 6th point: have developed infrastructure. I never seen any successful country which was underdeveloped in terms of infrastructure. So infrastructure will not save you, but without infrastructure, you're not going to be successful. Participate actively in organizing your own region. This is, I think, something which reflects very much on the Indian foreign policy thinking: nation first, but also after that, your region first, because it has the strongest connections towards the success of your nation, and then deal with the rest of the world. This is also one important point. The 8th point is build for the next generation. So all sectors related to next generational issues, obviously education, but family policies and even the infrastructure projects and many other areas are linked to the idea of transgenerationalism. This kind of thinking, this kind of mindset should be part of everyday government routine. The 9th point: make your country a meeting point. So in this global competition, those countries who don't have a voice, don't have a visibility, not interesting for the rest of the world. There are so many places on the world. So you have to compete and convince people, companies, thinkers, intellectuals that your country is worth to visit, your country is worth to settle, your country is worth to meet there. So in Hungary, through sports events, through cultural events, through political events, through economic events, through tourism, we try to convince as many people to think Hungary to think about Hungary as a meeting point. Security, 10 points. Without security, without law and order, everything is lost. So probably that should be the first point.
I was about to say
Yeah.
security should have been.
Security should be the first point. The 11th point, based on your foreign policy on a national interest. So it's again something which is very familiar to Indian ears. And the 12th point is to support peace, because even if the changing world order is playing on your hand, like turbulence and chaos and anarchy and world war cannot give a certainty to any single country that it will be a winner. It will be on the winning side and not on the losing side. So I think for all countries like this, in general, supporting the idea of peace and getting engaged in international dialogues based on this starting sentence, it's a must. So these are my 12 points, and thank you very much for your time, and I'm ready to discuss.
Thank you. As you can see, not only are these thought-provoking, but these are politically provocative ideas as well, considering the geography that he comes from. How many questions do we have? I just want to get a sense. 3, 4, fine, good. So before we start, as the moderator, I'll take the privilege of asking you 3 questions.
I take notes.
First, is the domestic politics of Hungary in tune with what you are proposing? This nationalism, this Christian nation, this values. Are you getting support through domestic politics for such an idea?
Yes. Without domestic support, we would not be in government. So the Fidesz party and Viktor Orbán as a prime minister got 4 times consecutive terms, 2/3 majority in the Hungarian parliament, which is quite close to miracle. And the reason why we had so is that look on the alternatives, the huge majority of the Hungarian and after that, look on the results. Huge majority of the Hungarian population voted for this alternative, voted for the national interest-based guys and politicians, not the liberals, because I think there are 2 reasons. One, and probably this is the most important reason, although I'm a social scientist and I really like to get engaged in ideology, but I think the most important is economy. So it doesn't matter what you have if you are not successful economically. It's impossible to convince the voters that you are right. So you have to prove economically that you are successful. As it was mentioned in your introduction, when we started to govern, we were a middle-income country. Now it's not anymore the case. We are a developed country according to World Bank statistics, but we don't want to stop there because we are not member of G20, for example. So it's like, there are significant room for further improvement. So the second thing is, so the first thing is economy, and the second thing what I would like to mention is not just party political issues, but like civilizational issues. So in the big questions, like historical questions, which are not important only for now, but for the upcoming 10, 20, 30, or 100 years, you have to be on the side of the people. If you are not on the side of the people, then they will outvote you. So there are many civilizational questions in Hungary where even those voters who are not supporting Fidesz, they do agree with Fidesz on that certain issue. First thing is that sovereignty, preserve sovereignty, national interest, realistic-based foreign policy. Peace, as I mentioned, in Hungary, 80% of the society is against the Russian-Ukrainian war without taking sides. So it's like, in general, they are against an idea of war. Migration issue, like opening up the borders for illegal migrants, it's like it's rejected by 90% of the society. We organize national referendums. We ask the opinion of the people. Same with the woke ideology, how it is transforming education and
so
things like
broadly, the people are with you
I mean,
on this.
So far,
Broadly, yeah.
yeah.
The
It's
second question is, so
the job of the politicians to keep it
fine.
that
So
way.
if domestic politics is in tune with Hungary, is Hungary in tune with the politics of EU? Is there a tension? What are these tensions between, for instance, EU is calling for open borders. You are calling for no immigrants. EU is talking about managing and what is the word? Incorporating the illegal migrants into the countries. You are saying we don't want to do that. There seems to be a conflict, and it seems to be hardening.
Yeah, it is. There is a conflict, and it is hardening. That's true. So you don't have to go into the details of the Hungarian history, but there is one thing you have to understand: the Hungarian tribes arrived from the Eastern Asian plains 1,100 years ago to Europe. They realized that they want to occupy that territory. Actually, they kicked out the indigenous people. They occupied the land. So if you talk about migration, we know what we talk about because we were the migrants back in time. And we didn't behave well in historical terms. And we converted to Christianity, integrated to the Western social structures. And for like 500 years, we were the last bastion of Christianity against the Ottomans. So it's decoded in Hungarian cells that we are the defenders of Christianity, of Europe as well. And this is a very important identification point of the Hungarians. That if there is a European cooperation, it doesn't matter how it's called. If it's peaceful, then we should be part of it, because we are in the center of Europe.
No, why I ask is because there are talks, there are analysis about either throwing Hungary out of EU or EU wanting to, or Hungary wanting to get out of EU.
And the second point is, first I'm trying to be very pro-European Union. After that, I can be very hard on them. So, but
that's the politician in you.
Yeah. But please wait. Please wait until my criticisms come. So the second element of why Hungary is pro-European Union is economic. Like if I try to convince an Indian company or any other company why come and visit us and invest and work together, if they look on the map, they see a 10 million country, which is small. But if I can say that create a headquarter in Hungary because that's a safe and sound and wonderful country, low taxes, good for investment, and you also have access to the entire European internal market, then we are talking about 450 million people. So that's a different size. So that's the practical element for us to be pro-European Union. And there are many, many issues which are causing us serious problems. And unfortunately, in last years, the negative tendencies did speed up. So now Europe is getting closer to the United States of America as an everyday working method or political functioning method. So many policies are dictated in Washington, and many member states, so many states as in the United States, they are dissatisfied with the decisions of the central government, and there is an ongoing rebellion against those policies, which are probably reasonable from the centrist liberal point of view, but it's not reasonable from the member states point of view. And unfortunately, until now, the Brusselian bureaucratic elite, the Commission, the Parliament, the Court, just like in Washington, it's dominated by this liberal ideology, which is in daily confrontation with Hungarian national interest and national strategy in various fields. They want to centralize all power. For example, we establish the border fence on our southern borders to keep the illegal migrants out. And it's not just that they do not support financially this initiative, but the court, the European court, started a case against us, and we lost the case, and they penalized us. So we have to pay 200 million euros and then 1 million euro per day if we want to keep that fence up, and we are not ready to destroy it and let the illegal migrants in. So it costs us a lot of money. They're using subsidies as weapons against those governments who are not signing up with European policies on the war, on many ideological issues we did mention. This is an everyday reality, but Hungarians are freedom-loving people, and we have a knowledge how to, avoid clash points and try to survive and bypass the will of the centers. Hungarians did it for like centuries with the Habsburgs.
So basically, you are not in tune with the broader EU, European Union.
How do you mean?
In your, for instance, the immigrations. Other than economy, you're not very well integrated with the EU on these issues.
Unfortunately, according to the EU, it's like EU has a constitution. It didn't call it. We didn't call it as a constitution, but actually, in more than 30 policy areas, the sovereignty is shared. So not a single member state can have laws based on their interests, but there are EU laws. Obviously, you are part of the process, but if the majority of the EU countries go to a different direction, you can vote against, but the law applies on you whether you like it or not in 30 policy areas. So this is in Europe something which we never tried before. Hungarian governmental decisions affects the everyday life of a Portuguese citizen. It wasn't the case. Portugal is far away from Hungary. I love the food. I love the people. It's a wonderful place. But never ever in the history we had anything in common with Portugal. They didn't have anything in common with Hungary. And now in Brussels, in 30 policy areas, we do decisions together, which means that the Portugal government decision affects the everyday life of the Hungarians and vice versa. So what I'm telling is that it's more than complicated, and to manage it properly and to help it to survive, we need to put more intellectual efforts to understanding each other differences. Unfortunately, now, since Europe is in a bad shape, economically it's going down, the tension is rising in many issues. This kind of intellectual understanding, which needs to manage such a complex system, it's not growing, it's like also declining. So it's getting more and more complicated on the daily basis. But governments and local, national elections and new kind of governments can still cause a kind of change. So if you have a new German government or a new French government or a new Polish government or a new Hungarian government, then the entire dynamism can change. I hope that there will be no new Hungarian government, just use it as an example.
So
probably German.
So we've discussed domestic politics, we've discussed EU politics. Now I ask you my final question, because I have a couple of minutes. Is Hungary in tune with the world, with globalization? How do you reconcile, for instance, that non-Christian money is okay, non-Christian trade is okay, but non-Christians aren't?
Well, actually, this is what the book is about. I wrote another book. It was also translated to English, A Hungarian Way of Strategy. It's more about this ideology and the importance of Christian roots and how to develop the country strategy. This is more about the world order, and not on through the lens of ideology, but through the lens of geopolitics and economy. And what I realize is that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when we had the Pax Americana moment, there was an ideology which was leading the world. This ideology was that that end of history happened, as it was said by Francis Fukuyama, and the neoliberal type of globalization will spread, and this will have a stabilizing effect on the world order and on the upcoming decades, and by the effect of it, America will remain the only superpower, but other countries will also have economic benefits from this structure. But today, it's obvious that this perception failed. It didn't happen because many other power centers and countries emerged. So the equilibrium economically, politically, strategically, militarily is changed completely. And this end of history narrative is not anymore valid because it's obvious that no countries want to import and impose and they are imposing actually this neoliberal way of thinking and way of living for their own citizens. So they have their own culture, own structure, own economic logic. So what I write down in this book, and I think probably because until now this is kind of, it's a commonly shared opinion. But what I try to write down the book is that I think that the Western liberal thinkers, they came up with a new strategy. So there is a new strategy. And these new strategy is called bloc formation. That to try to preserve the Western hegemony, all Western powers should be act more closely together, should separate themselves from the rest of the world. The world itself should be divided to democracies and autocracies, as it is openly said by Francis Fukuyama. And the only chance you have is to choose between whether you want to be part of the coalition of democracies or you want to be part of the coalition of autocracies. Whether you want to be on the good side of history or bad side of history. This is the only question for you.
So you are looking beyond binaries.
Yes, and I think it's a big threat because it separates the world, it separates the countries from the economic point of view.
So to argue, aren't you separating also the world when you say it's a Christian nation, it's for Christian people and
I argue against all kind of separations because
but one of your, I think your point number 2 in your the Hungarian those 12 points was that it is a Christian way of life, and this is what we are.
But your way of life is different. So why would I separate myself from you that you are Hindu? I think you are. So this is what it means: a national conservative, nation first foreign policy. That I'm a Christian. I'm very transparent with you about my values. I don't think my values are more superior over your values. These are my values, these are my goals, and this is why I behave like this. And I understand your values. I understand why you behave like this and what are your strategy goals based on your values. So it's like Hungary has the toughest migration policy in Europe. But in the same time, we have the deepest cooperation with Turkey, deepest strategic type of cooperation. Why it is the case? Many people are saying that it's impossible. Your anti-immigration policy is an anti-Muslim policy. It's obviously not. It's a policy which is based on our national interest. And the Turks, who are having an openly said pro-Muslim policy, they understand it because they understand that the value system is based on Muslim religion and political thoughts and so on. But they respect that there is another country which foreign policy is based on the Christian structures. But it's not about convincing or converting each other. It's about having a structure of cooperation based on that difficulties. And the Western powers are not understandable for the rest of the world because they did give up their own identity. So the rest of the world, the non-Westerners, they don't understand Western behavior because you cannot identify it. I cannot identify the reason behind it because there is no Western value structure anymore behind it. So, and for this reason, it's non-understandable for the rest of the world. And this is why the Western influence is going down. So what I'm advocating for is that we have to realize that the world is different. There are different value structures, different power centers, different histories, but we can build a stable world order only based on that and not based on liberal ideology. So everybody who is advocating in favor of decoupling based on ideologies or value systems and isolating and arguing in favor of isolating each other based on that is actually arguing in favor of third world war, sorry, and actually is arguing in favor of a less stable world order.
Thank you. I'll open it out. If there are any questions, just two right now. 3, 4, 5, 6. Fine. So I think we can take one question at a time and delve deep into it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Pavan. My question, in fact, follows from the comment which you made regarding the historicity playing an important role in your domestic policy as well as your international policy of any nation for that matter, not only for Hungary as such. So, my question stems from the fact that Hungary was an important member of Soviet bloc and a member of Warsaw Pact. So, what kind of, in fact, policy choices and how it affects your policy choices externally as well as internally, both domestic policies, economic policies, as well as your international choices, international policy choices? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very good question, but in Hungarian political thinking, we don't formulate the question in that way, because in the Hungarian mindset, this Soviet occupation period of time was about losing our independence and having a foreign force dominating us against our will. So and the Hungarian society was very much resistant on everything which was coming from Moscow and for the Soviets. Let me give you one example. It was obligatory to learn Russian in the school during the Soviet period of time. But in Hungary, technically, no one speaks any kind of Russian because the people did forget it. And now I think it's a big problem, because it would be very helpful for us to have more Russian-speaking population to make relations. But since it was obligatory, it resisted. But so if we think about connections outside the Western world, then we get back to more ancient period of times, not just this Soviet period. So the Hungarian, as I was mentioning, the Hungarian tribes were coming from the East Asian plain, and we are, for example, members of the Turkish Council, because the Turkish nations, they think on us as brothers, Western Christian brothers. And if I go to Japan, there are some people who are saying that we are relatives with the Japanese people because our ancestors were living together in the Eastern Asian plain, and those went towards east and the others went towards the west. So actually what we are building on is not the Soviet heritage, but this kind of Eastern origin of Hungary, that the story I was describing, the historical fact that the Hungarians are the ones who were coming from outside Europe and then later integrated towards the West. So for this reason, we understand now the so-called global South. For us, it's easier to deal with them than the others, and we can be a kind of a mediators between the two parts. So this is our description.
Any question here?
This is our description.
Somebody had raised his hand. Yeah, please. We want to go very fast, I think. because we
Hello,
just
sir.
have 20 minutes.
Hello, sir. This side Adil Masoodi. I just want to ask about that. You said that the country should be based on, suppose, for example, religious doctrines. Like you have a Hungary people you take on the basis of Christian religion, right? So don't you think that it can lead to clash of civilizations later on?
It can lead to what?
Clash of civilization.
Hmm.
What has already been done in the history?
No, I don't think so. I do think that liberal global ideologies can lead the world into disastrous moments, as it was happened in the two world wars. So, especially the Second World War, and what we learned in the European history, it's a historical lie that nationalism led to world wars. It's a lie. No, it's supranational ideology, which navigated us in an unfortunate way to world wars. Because what Nazism is a supranational ideology. What communism is, it's a supranational ideology. And what contemporary progressive liberalism is a supranational ideology, which means that it wants to impose itself on the rest of the world. It doesn't matter where were you born, in which nation to belong, in which part of the world you live. You should follow that ideology. If you don't follow that ideology, then you are on the wrong side of the history. So nationalism, based on the country's culture, it goes the other way around. It's not aggressive. It's not their view is not about expanding their views. I'm a Hungarian Christian national. I don't care what the Indians think. I don't want to occupy them and convince them to be Hungarian Christian nationals. They can do whatever they want. And the same, and the other way around. I don't think that that Hindu nationalism wants to occupy Hungary and convert us to Hinduism. So it's not there. It's a ridiculous claim. So honestly, I think the opposite way. So only this kind of national conservative based on thinking where your superior identification point is your own nation based on your own culture can save 21st century and can prevent us from the Third World War.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
How do you define nationalism versus patriotism from your point of view?
From my point of view, from my point of view, there is no difference between, because the bad way of nationalism, according to my understanding, which you think that your nation is more superior than other nations, so for this reason you try to occupy and lecture them, it's chauvinism. It's not nationalism. So in my view, there is no difference between nationalism and patriotism. It's the same. It's only based on historical experiences and how the language, our political language, was occupied by the left. Not many people dare to use the word nationalism.
I'll just enter. Could it be that nationalism is a political entity and patriotism an individual expression?
Could be. This is one explanation. I'm a very good friend of mine, Yoram Hazony, who is an Israeli philosopher. He wrote a book, Virtue of Nationalism. And he taught me that we should get back to the word of nationalism and we should again using it. I told him that, Yoram, it's very good, but you are Jewish American citizens. For you to use the word nationalism is a very simple thing, but I'm a Hungarian Christian. So for me, use the word nationalism. It's complicated, but I collected some in recent years. I collected some bravery, and since then I'm trying to use it as well. And I regularly keep asking Yoram to defend myself if I'm in trouble.
But you became the cavalryman that you're talking about.
Yes, that's true.
Yes, sir.
It's Karni Singh. So just 2 or 3 quick points on. First thing is you talk of this Hussar Cut as such. Hussars were historically it connects with people from Hungary and anybody who's studied military or this. But Hussars were essentially Serb soldiers in your service. So how much does it echo, or how much of empathy do you have for the state that Serbia is in today? That's one. The second is you were yourself part of Austro-Hungarian Empire. And what's your relationship on this reading of history and your kind of nationalism and defense of Christianity and things like that vis-a-vis Austria itself? And as Magyars, you were demolishers of at least three great empires, including Byzantine and later Carolingian and things like that. So, I mean, if Christianity, you are young Christians, you're not, and you're a young nation as well. So you're extolling the virtue both of Christianity, where you are a late convert, you're an outsider, and late nationalist. You were almost like Poland that disappeared. You could have disappeared, and suddenly you're raising this nationalism aspect to its height. So I was wondering whether, for instance, you met Mr. Jaishankar, who's in service of the present government. Did you have to talk, or he already understood
I think
you?
we are
and
digressing.
That's it.
I think you please answer the
Thank you.
question.
I'm very lucky because the wonderful Foreign Minister of India was serving 3 years in Hungary. So he even speaks some Hungarian, or at least he understands it. So he knows much better Hungary than I do. So because he has a strategic vision on that. So we had very good discussions, and always we have very good discussions with him. The two questions. One is that you said we are a young nation, which is compared to Indian standards as a civilization is probably true, but compared to Western standards, we are an old nation. And now the fight, the intellectual fight, what we are fighting is that in many Western countries, this kind of national movement or nationalism, it's a relatively new phenomenon. It started just in the 18th century. So before the 18th century, many European and Western countries and the people who were living in that countries, they were not identifying themselves as a member of nations. So for example, in a medieval period of time, a Catholic French had more ideologic, more common in ideology and way of thinking with the Catholic Spaniard than with the Protestant French and the Protestant Spaniard. So religion used to be more decisive factor, for example, than nationhood. So it was actually the effect of the French Revolution that Western countries realized that, oh, like using this tendency of nationalism as modernizing the country, and they became nations. But for them, it's only 200 years old. So for them, it's very reasonable to raise the question whether I should go further to that direction or change the course. And many Western thinkers, I mean, serious intellectual people were saying that we were much better off before this period of nationalism. So why don't we get rid of it and invent something new? I'm obviously I disagree with it, but from a it's like a rational point of view if you are a Western European or an American. But Hungary is different. When we came into the Carpathian Basin, we occupied it together. All the tribes, we did speak the same language. We coming from the same area. We had the national purpose to establish a country. It was 1,100 years ago. So compared to European standards, we are the old nation. We are among the old nations. We are not the only one. Poland and some other nations as well, but we are among the oldest one. The second thing is about the region. So as I mentioned you, this strategy is not working against anybody. So if it's about that we have to be against somebody, a country or a neighboring country or what, and we're going to fail. It's like we have to find a narrative and the story and the success story for the entire region. And we need to be able to build partnership with our neighboring countries to convince them that together we are much better off than than in a separated way. And for example, historically, our relationship with the Serbs was very complicated, but now it's on a historical peak, because the Serbian elite and the Hungarian elite realize that if we get together, it's easier for us. I hope with the Austrians we will also be able to establish a new type of strategic relationship, because this old Austrian monarchy territory, the Czechs, Slovaks, Serbs, Hungarians, partly the Slovenes and Croats and the Austrians, in many geopolitical issues, we see the world in a similar way. My problem is, if I may add one just element, I think Central Europe is now struggling, the entire region, because there are many countries who think that their only chance is to portray themselves as the last frontiers of the West against the Russians. And this is how they want to make their country interesting. Like I'm defending the West against the Russians. And if you want to be defended, invest money and invest military support. And this is how I will modernize the country. In the long term, I don't think it's a good strategy. The Hungarian, and I would say the former Austrian Hungarian monarchy countries offer is different. Like we are Westerners, we are integrated into the Western system, but we are open to anyone. We advocate peace. We are in the middle of the original trade routes between East and West. Why don't we turn our countries into a hub of Western, but also non-aligned type of gravitation point? And this can be a good story for the 21st century.
Thank you. Last question. Okay, I'll take that. What's your question?
Greetings, sir. I have two questions. So, India had to face a lot of Western pressure when we purchased Russian oil. So, given that Hungary criticized Ukrainian sanction on the Russian oil flow, how do you see the European dependence on the Russian energy? And especially when the Hungarian government sought to deepen economic ties with the Eastern powers. And so, second question is, India has been very blessed in the aspect that our foreign policy remains consistent, irrespective of who's in charge of the government. So, the current Hungarian strategy, as described by you, is there a uniform consensus with the opposition? And historically speaking, how does the Hungarian foreign policy varies with who's in charge of the government?
That's a very good question. The Hungarian society is 100%, or I would say 80% on the same side that this Ukrainian Russian war is against the interest of our country. It should be stopped immediately. It cannot solved on the battlefield, but should be solved at the diplomatic tables, and some pragmatic energy and economy-based relationship should be maintained with Russia, whether the others like it or not, because that's our national interest. So there is among the grassroots voters, there is a political consensus on that. I think we are the only country on the world where the popularity numbers of Zelensky and Putin are on the exact same low numbers. So both foreign leaders are unpopular, because Hungarian people think that they are fighting a war which is not good for the Hungarians. So they don't want to take sides. So in many countries, Zelensky is more popular, Putin is unpopular. In many other countries, it's the other way around. But in Hungary, it's like you are doing something which is not good for me, so don't do it, or I don't like you. So this is the general grassroots attitude. The problem is with the political elite. In Hungary, I'm 100% convinced there is only one national political elite, which gets its legitimacy, its financial background, its media background from inside. So all the opposition parties are technically, politically, media-wise, financial-wise overtaken by foreign actors. And if they are ready, if they somehow get enough support on the elections and they get elected, they will sign up for the Western policies and they will be not able to remain independent. Unfortunately, we are not strong enough to have two national political elite. We have one, and we have the other one, which is financed from outside, and their job is to try to, overtake us.
Thank you. Last question.
Namaste, Mr. Orban. You mentioned that the world cannot be based on the liberal ideology. Which alternative ideology would you propose for the world to follow in 21st century? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would propose not having any ideology, which is managing the world. A non-ideological world order, where countries and power centers are dealing with international relations based on their national interest. And more technical, more pragmatic, more policy-based type of cooperation, not ideologically driven cooperation. Because my point is, and this is the point of the book, if the international world order and international cooperation is based on ideology, then it sooner or later it will become oppressive, because those who are in charge of international relations and managing the world order and big powers, they will use that ideology to put pressure on others. Either they sign up or they going to be in trouble. So it's never in the history, never in the 20th century, and I think it will never be in the 21st century when a stable world order can be established based on any ideology. Only pragmatic, realist, national interest-based intellectual work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orban, but I'm forced to squeeze out those last 30 seconds by asking you a related question to what he's just said. Okay, maybe ideologically free world is possible, but overall, all of us see, or is aspirational?
No. Ideologically free world is impossible, because
You don't want a world ideology.
No. But international relations based on ideology, it's possible. Sorry, but
Okay.
to be precise.
Fine. So my question is that ideology is only one aspect of a move towards a one world issue. Everybody wants to unite the world, so some do it around ideology. But equally, there are other forces, for instance, technology, for instance, trade, for instance, finance, investments, for instance, travel and tourism, education. And I think in these larger play of forces, ideology can be seen as one experiment where those who wish to unite the world in some way, or the forces that end up uniting the world in some way, find their feet somewhere.
Yes, but honestly, probably you can say I'm really a Hungarian nationalist, but I don't want to unite the world. I just don't want the world to destroy my country.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a very illuminating discussion, and I think many conversations will carry on over tea as we head for tea over there. Thank you very much for writing this book, for your thoughts. We may not agree with all of them, but they are definitely thought-provoking, and I will see you will see more reflections of this, I think, as individual countries through nationalism find their own way. Thank you very much, Mr. Orban. And would you please sign this for me?